Hello and welcome to our next history lesson. And today we're going to have a look at what we can understand from discoveries that archaeologists have found from the Viking period, and particularly around York and what was called then Jorvik. So we know that from our work on Anglo-Saxon Britain that much of what we know is because of archaeologists, those people who find objects in the ground and attribute meaning to them. So here we have an image of an archaeological site, and you can see the archaeologists digging in the ground here, trying to find anything that might give them a hint of what's going on or what happened in the past. So in 1976, when this picture was taken, the Coppergate area of York was excavated by archaeologist Richard Hall and his team. The artefacts they found helped us to understand more about the daily lives of Vikings in Britain. Now, we can only comment on the fact that it's Vikings in Britain because we don't know whether this is the same or different from elsewhere, apart from by comparing archaeological finds in the two different areas and seeing whether they are similar or not. They are relatively similar indeed. And what they have to do is look at whatever items they pick up, they find, think about how that would be used in the daily life and thinking about how that would show or how that would affect their lives at that point. So, following the did, the Jorvik Viking Centre was built and opened its doors to the public in 1984. Now, Jorvik was the name of York, where York is now, of the city that was in the same position. It was called Jorvik. It was a Viking city. So here they are, here at the Jorvik Viking Centre. They try to bring the Viking age to life with life-size models and exhibits. So what they would have done is anything that they would have found, they would try and show how those items may be used in context. So in thinking about where that is in the environment, how it would have been used, and who it would have been used by. And they've made it so that everything you see within the exhibit relates to part of Viking life. So they would have found things like the pans, the tools. They may have also found the footings of any buildings that would give them an idea of how large they would have been. They may have some idea of some jewellery that they wore or pieces of clothing, depending on how much has been rotted away and where they were found. And the same with the way in which they would have set out their land as to how they would have done that, because they can have a look at how land use was affected at those sort of times. Now, we know a little bit about Viking tools and weapons. So these have been found in numerous different places to do with Viking digs. So we know that they were widely used. And this is the seax, which was this knife that was worn at the belt and could be used as an everyday tool or as a weapon. So it would be a backup weapon if it was used as a weapon. You can see how large it would have been. It's about the length of your forearm, just shorter. And it would have been carried most of the time. And this can be used for lots of different things. So whittling wood, cutting wood, trimming meat, all those sorts of bits and pieces. Another common item that they would have been carrying is a hand axe, so a small hand axe. And this would have been a tool used for cutting wood or large pieces of meat, but also as a common weapon, something that they could reach and grab, and they knew very well, they knew the weight of it, and therefore felt very comfortable using it. So you can already see that the Vikings obviously were a very hands-on people. They carried with them the tools that they needed. Another one is a shield, and this would have given protection against sharp objects like swords. And depending on the embellishment within the shield would have depended on how rich the individual was. But obviously, the majority of them were round shields, much like this, and quite often they have sponsors in the middle, which is this bit here, just as an extra bit of protection. Spears. This is a single-handed spear, so you can see that from the height. The taller they were, then they might have had to use with two hands, but it's a single-handed spear. And this could be held in one hand, so that you could hold a shield in the other. And this gave whoever was using it extra reach in battle, which meant that they were less at danger themselves. And this is quite important because obviously the more you can protect yourself, the more you can keep your opponent at arm's reach, the less likely they are to cause damage to you, but the more likely you are to them. We would have had chain mail. So this was protection from sharp objects like swords. And remember, we saw something similar to this when we looked at the Romans, and the reason why these were very good. And underneath, they would have worn padding that meant any hit that was suffered against the chainmail would stop the cutting part, the sharp part of it. But you'd still have the force behind it. So the padding underneath it would have stopped most of the force. You'd still probably be bruised, but at least it would stop you being injured. The same with the helmets. Now, what you'll notice is there are no horns because, like I said before, really silly idea. The horns that would come down like this. Well, if you'd hit a horn with your sword, the sword would have ran down the horn straight into the side of the person's head, which is not the best idea. Because what helmets were designed for was to make it so that they were deflected away from the head. You wouldn't want your head exposed. But also, what you'll notice in this is that he often came down over the nose, because another area which you need to protect is your nose, your cheeks, and your eyes. So your eyes are already set back, so you've got good protection there, but also across this, if you can protect that, that just means that you're less likely to be injured during battle. You also might protect the sides of the head, have something down here, or a coif around the back here to stop that being hit as well. And then you would have some swords. Now, swords are probably the most expensive weapons they would have had, and they would only been given to the best warriors. And most Vikings would have used other tools as weapons in battle rather than swords. And swords were expensive because of the amount of steel they were made out of, how heavy they were. And so quite a lot, when they had them, quite a lot went into decorating and making the most of them. And you can see that in these images here. Many swords, because of the expense of them, were handed down, and so were family swords that were handed down. And this meant that the person that was handed down to kind of had to live up to the fact that they had this sword. And it was part of the honour of carrying it. So in the dig site in York revealed a lot more than just weapons, lots of Viking artefacts. Remember, artefacts are objects that are discovered in a dig that relate to a certain period of time. So your task, what you're going to do today, you're going to become amateur archaeologists. So you're going to have a look at some of the artifacts that were found, and you're going to think about what they might have been used for and what you think they might be, who they might have been used by, and where they might have been found. So on the next screen, there's going to be 6 items that are found at Jorvik, and your job is to tell me what you think they are and what you think they might be made of and where they might have come from. So here are our items. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, and 6. Now think about it carefully. Some of them you might see straight away and go, I know what that might be. But do you know what all of the image is? Say, for example, in 5, you might have an idea for this, but what is this bit here? Or 6, what are the both pieces? Why do they go together? They were normally found together. The same here in number 3, what were these parts compared in relation to these bits? Have a think about it. Write your ideas down and upload them to Tapestry. That's all for today. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.